It says Apple wants a contract for $21,000 to license BASIC. Do you know what this means, Paul?
Yeah. It means that we're desperate for business. We're nearly bankrupt, and even worse, we're in Albuquerque.
Welcome to Tech Tales. I'm Corbin Davenport.
I'm Zachary Wander.
I'm Katie Janzen.
And today we are doing another movie club episode. We all watched Pirates of Silicon Valley, which was a TV movie that premiered on TNT on June 20th, 1999. There will be a link in the show notes to wherever it is available to watch legally, but as of when we're recording this, it is nowhere. You cannot watch this movie. So this movie, it's sort of a docudrama, I guess is the right word for it, but it has Steve Wozniak and Steve Ballmer as occasional narrators breaking the fourth wall. But otherwise, it is just kind of like going over the early history of Apple and Microsoft.
I want to push back on that slightly. I would argue that the fourth wall is largely maintained apart from one sequence in particular in the middle of the movie, and then never again was my thought on the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much the mockumentary, like, oh, this is The Office, kind of like, we're doing interviews after the fact.
Ballmer had a lot of story breaks.
Did he? I only saw the one where he like
I mean, there was the major one of the CGI craziness, but he was constantly just turning to the camera and being like, and then, like, to set up scene changes. And Wozniak had one of those breaks, but mostly he was an after the fact interview.
I see.
Yeah, I mostly just remember the one. So this movie has Noah Wyle as Steve Jobs, Joey Slotnick as Steve Wozniak, Anthony Michael Hall as Bill Gates, John DiMaggio as Steve Ballmer, and Josh Hopkins as Paul Allen. It was directed by Martin Burke. It was based on a Paul Freiberger and Michael Swain book from 1984 called Fire in the Valley, The Making of the Personal Computer. I'll just kind of like go over the story broadly here, and then I guess we'll get into individual bits. But it starts in the early 1970s, jumping between Steve Jobs and Steve Woz developing early home computer prototypes at the Homebrew Computer Club, and it later cuts to Bill Gates with his classmates Steve Ballmer and Paul Allen at Harvard learning about the Altair 8800 computer. And then it goes to Jobs and Woz building the first Apple computers in Jobs' garage, and then jumping a few more years to the reveal of the Apple II at the West Coast Computer Fair. It goes over Bill Gates dropping out of Harvard to found Microsoft, and then him and Allen and Ballmer meet Steve Jobs for the first time at that computer fair, at least in the movie. It covers Microsoft going to IBM to pitch them an operating system for the IBM PC, which Ballmer describes as one of the most important events of all time. And then they go license
Boy, does
that.
he.
Yeah. But they don't have the operating system at that point, so it shows them going to buy it from Seattle Computer Products. Later in the movie, there's sort of a final blow up between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Also spread throughout the movie are bits of Steve Jobs' relationship with a character named Arlene, who is meant to represent Kristen Brennan, who Jobs has a daughter with named Lisa. And then finally at the end of the movie, it ends in 1997 because this movie came out in 1999. And it shows Steve Jobs returning to Apple and announcing a corporate partnership with Microsoft and Bill Gates.
Yeah, and that scene is the bookends of the film in some sense. We start in the Steve brings Bill on the screen, and then we finish in that same scene with the whole for Apple to win doesn't mean Microsoft has to lose.
Yeah, the movie starts with Steve Jobs at, I think, some Macworld conference, basically announcing that like Apple's working with Microsoft more closely, and there's like boos in the audience and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like what did y'all think of the general story?
I guess it was interesting.
I definitely enjoyed the film story as on a scene by scene basis. Like there are some scenes that are really strange and they don't seem to fit together very well. But if you take each scene on its own, I mostly think that they showcase pretty interesting character interactions. Because I don't remember if it's this movie or if it was something else, but isn't one of the original Mac team, maybe Andy Hertzfeld, or I might be getting that name wrong, quoted as saying, like, none of it happened, but all of it's true. I thought that was about this movie.
I don't know if that was specifically. This movie is interesting because I would say the broad strokes of it are correct.
The basic facts survive intact.
Right, but I don't know how much of each scene individually is true. I get the impression that a lot of the individual interactions are mostly made up for this.
Yeah, I definitely got that impression as well. That they're conveying a personality dynamic more than this conversation happened this way.
No, there's no way anyone could remember most of that. So they'd have to make it up.
Yeah, but even some of the bigger events are sort of made up. Like there's one scene in the movie where Microsoft goes to IBM, and IBM is working on the IBM PC, and Microsoft is like, wouldn't you like an operating system for your PC? And this is when they do that fourth wall break, and Steve Ballmer sort of like pops out of the movie in a very 90s CG fashion and turns to the camera and is like, this is the greatest meeting of all time. This is what sets up Microsoft and Bill Gates and so on.
I was not remotely ready for Ballmer's character just obliterating the fourth wall in like the top of the second hour of the movie, and then never on that level again.
Yeah, it was very funny. But they have that meeting where they go and pitch, and it's very much portrayed as like the first time Microsoft is going to IBM, but in reality, IBM approached Microsoft first, so that was partially made up. I don't know how much of that interaction about that meeting was true or not. There's also a scene in the movie where someone is interviewing for a job at Apple, and Steve Jobs is there, and he sort of like
just sexually
antagonizes
him.
Yeah, and
yeah,
asks him,
Jobs ripping into that interviewee was fucked.
Yeah, and like Steve Jobs, like just this guy is normal interviewing, and Steve Jobs is like, "Have you had sex before?" And apparently that's like a story of something that happened at Apple for years, but Steve Jobs denied that happened. I don't know if that's
who would admit
truthful.
to that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's truthful or not, but not entirely clear on that one. The main break from reality here that I noticed is the last scene of the movie where Steve Jobs is showing the 1984 Apple ad to employees, and Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer are sort of backstage watching. And after that, they all kind of go to this other like backstage area where Steve Jobs is like, we just got these NEC computers from Japan that have Windows on them, and you guys stole Windows from us. And there's this big confrontation, but like the timelines for that they don't line up at all. Because they're showing the commercial before it aired. I don't know exactly when, but the original Macintosh didn't even release until January 24th of 1984, and Windows 1.0 was released to manufacturing in November 20th of 1985, so almost 2 years later. So that specific scene couldn't have really happened that way.
I just can't believe they stole the Fortnite commercial.
Yeah, it opens with like the very start of the movie is Apple filming the 1984 ad with J.G. Hertzler as Ridley Scott, in the movie, which number one, I didn't know Ridley Scott directed that ad. And then also number two, I love J.G. Hertzler. He's because I just finished watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine for like the third time. And he is the Klingon General Martok.
I will say, looking at like the cover, like the promotional of the movie, I was like, I don't know about this casting, but like once the movie like started in earnest, just truly some inspired casting for this movie. That's one of the best things about the movie to me. Like John DiMaggio, like as Steve Ballmer was.
He was Steve
truly
Ballmer.
An experience.
That's not John DiMaggio. That's Steve Ballmer.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I didn't scroll far. I didn't scroll down enough in the like page about this movie to see that was coming before I started watching it. Like I knew.
Yeah, neither did I.
I knew, so that was just like a nice surprise. I was like, oh my goodness, that's Bender in my computer history movie, and he is like reincarnated Steve Ballmer. Absolutely, the funniest part in this movie for me was that bit where they are, I think, at an airport or just landed at an airport, and Bill Gates is like, I forgot my tie. And then Steve Ballmer like looks over the stall in the men's room to the guy on the toilet. He's like, "Hey, how much for your tie? How much you want for your tie? $20? $20? Where'd you get that? Sears? $30?" That was incredible.
Oh my god, the tie was just I couldn't with the tie. I lost. I think I had to pause and laugh for like 5 solid minutes. It was so much.
It was a fantastic bit. He was great. I don't know enough about Steve Ballmer to say if that was like a realistic interpretation of him at the time. But my main knowledge of Steve Ballmer is that Windows 1.0 ad that you can go find on YouTube where he's like psyched out for the built-in software on Windows 1.0. And also, of course, that video of him on stage at some Microsoft event, just absolutely drenched in sweat, doing the developers chant. So based on those two showcases of Steve Ballmer, that seemed like a good...
If anything, a very restrained portrayal on the part of John DiMaggio.
That's true. I didn't see him drenched in sweat once.
That's right.
So yeah, I guess we can talk about all of the other main cast. So kind of the main star of this is Noah Wyle as Steve Jobs. And that's the role that I think ends up being the most talked about aspect of this movie, is like how great of a job he did at being Steve Jobs.
Yeah, he at the very least looked almost exactly like young Steve Jobs.
I thought the voice and mannerisms were even more spot on than the visual appearance. Because looking at the poster, I did not think he favored Steve Jobs that much at all. But when he started, like, acting, moving and talking out loud, I was like, oh, fuck, that's Steve Jobs.
This movie was filmed at the same time Noah Wyle was filming his scenes in the show ER. I've not seen ER or most of the other things he's been in. However, I did watch The Pit on HBO Max a few months ago, where he's also the star role, and he's very good in that. So that's mainly what I was excited for going into this movie, was like, okay, let's see how he is as Steve Jobs. He's pretty good.
The Bill Gates actor, I think is it Anthony Michael Hall, is also a fantastic actor. I don't know how much Psych y'all two have watched, but he plays the dictatorial internal affairs officer acting as interim chief for a few episodes, and he's really good in that as well.
I watched Psych, but I don't remember like any of it. It was funny watching this because I'd just seen the latest season of Reacher, and Anthony Michael Hall plays a main character in that, and I was like, oh, that's not the same person, but it is the same person. Like, he looks completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of the overarching theme of this movie, I think, is how Bill Gates is essentially playing everyone. That I think that's kind of what conclusion the movie pushes you towards. Because Steve Jobs and
Yeah, Bill
Steve
Gates is a
Wozniak are
sociopath in this.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak are doing their own thing at Apple, and the movie continually cuts to Bill Gates being like at times jealous and other times like just kind of like cold and calculating. And then only at the very end, when Steve Jobs is confronting him over Windows copying him, he sort of like finally blows up. So yeah, I thought he did a pretty good job too.
Yeah.
I did find in a Reddit AMA in 2013 that Bill Gates did. Someone asked him about his character in the movie, and he said, quote, "That portrayal was reasonably accurate."
Oh. So he is a sociopath.
Oh my god! I was not remotely ready for you to say that, Corbin. Yeah, I have heard that this era of Bill Gates was that he was just a ruthless machine of a man as heading up Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think this movie does try to at least show both Steve Jobs and Bill Gates as not well. Like they both have pretty serious issues. I guess more so Steve Jobs just because the movie focuses more on him, but it tries to show a lot of the like blow ups Steve Jobs has at people working on Apple, at Steve Wozniak. It does go over the whole thing where Steve Jobs initially didn't want to recognize his daughter as his daughter and like not pay child support or anything.
Yeah, the Lisa Brennan Jobs stuff is just completely heartbreaking.
I thought that whole part of the movie to me felt like the thing they cut out to make this a TV runtime movie.
As far as the resolution, you mean?
Yeah, just like you see them very briefly, like, oh, they're a couple, and then oh, Steve Jobs doesn't want to acknowledge his kid, and then like later there's that last scene where he goes to their house and they kind of just like, hey, you doing okay? All right, bye. Like,
Bye.
yeah, it's like, so I don't know if that's true to life necessarily or just like something they were like, we have to make this a TV movie, we got to cut something, and the nerds probably care more about this other stuff. That part felt a little bit, that whole storyline felt a bit weird to me in this movie.
Sorry, just rolling back to the portrayal of Gates. There's a line from Gates that I wrote down because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Within 1 minute of each other, you have him saying, "Success is a menace. It fools smart people into thinking they can't lose," which I think is just like an unassailable, like true statement. Like that's the thesis of the Catmull book about Pixar, that success hides problems. And then like immediately after that, he goes up to this girl and is like, "You probably have great bandwidth."
Yeah, there's a lot of incredible lines in this movie, both like intentionally and not.
Drop dead bomber.
Yeah, I wrote down drop dead bomber. I think Bill Gates says that at one point. I didn't write down who said most of these lines, which might make it funnier, but someone said, quote, "Eating fruit all the time, that's weird." I don't remember if Steve Jobs said that or someone else, but I thought that was funny.
I think my favorite Jobs line had to be right after dropping acid. He's like, "I'm standing in front of a field of wheat." Yeah, Steve, I've played Minecraft too. It's okay.
My favorite line from this movie is when Microsoft is setting up shop, and I think Bill Gates says this. He says, "We're nearly bankrupt, and even worse, we're in Albuquerque."
I really liked as they were walking up to Jobs, and this or not to Jobs, I really liked as they were walking up to Apple. I felt like I was one of the Mongol hordes here to loot and plunder from a bunch of defenseless villagers. Oof.
There's a couple times where they like try to like really hone in the pirate analogy, and it kind of feels like what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad? Like what are we, some kind of Pirates of Silicon Valley?
Did IBM actually have company anthems? That was something that I was like, huh? Because they talked about IBM having anthems and even did like a little background montage of a bunch of people in suits singing something about IBM.
Oh, there is one. IBM's corporate anthem, this is from QZ. IBM's corporate anthem, Hail to the IBM, lyrics above, was written by a Metropolitan Opera singer and debuted in 1939 at a company dinner. Okay, so I guess also jumping to going down the other list of people in this movie, Joey Slotnick as Steve Wozniak. What are our Woz thoughts?
I don't know enough about Woz to know.
Yeah, I also don't know a ton about Woz. I will say in this movie, he definitely doesn't get as much attention as Jobs.
He's very passive.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote down, like, he just does not stand up to Jobs at all.
Yeah, a lot of this movie is just sort of like him reacting to Steve Jobs doing something, for sure.
One of my favorite scenes with Jobs and Woz, though, is earlier in the movie, they're, I guess, at a Vietnam War protest, and I guess all the protesters are running from the cops, and they're running the opposite way as all the protesters, and they come upon a cloud of tear gas, and they don't even try to go around it, they just run straight through the cloud. It's like, it almost looks like they change path to walk directly through the cloud of tear gas. And then they're like,
just a little bit of tear gas, like SpongeBob and Patrick running through the department store. Okay, so we already talked about John DiMaggio. It also had Josh Hopkins as Paul Allen, which didn't really talk much.
Now let's see Paul Allen's card.
Yeah. He was kind of just in the scenes that had all the Microsoft gang together. I think there's only like one bit where he's alone with Bill Gates at like that diner.
Doesn't he take Gates to task for hitting his car with the bulldozer?
Yeah, no, they stole bulldozers from like a construction site.
Having a construction equipment joyride race in a movie about computers is amazing. Yeah. Again, this portrayal of me was reasonably accurate.
I will say another scene I really liked in this was when Steve Jobs and Wozniak are working on I think it's the initial Apple I. Woz admits that he has to show everything he works on to his boss, and they get sort of like first dibs. Yeah, they get like first dibs on the project. So he brings this, Apple computer prototype to his boss, which turns out to be HP. And his boss at HP is like, what on earth would ordinary people want with computers? And Woz like sits it on his desk, and the boss is like not impressed at all. And then the next scene is like Woz like running home excited because like they don't care, we can make Apple computers.
He specifically like he did like the fake out thing where he like kind of somberly walked up to Jobs and is like, they hated it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, also in terms of just computer history stuff, there was a lot in here that I did recognize. Again, I don't know a ton about the early history of like the individual people in here necessarily, but I did recognize the Altair 8800, which was this like extremely early microcomputer that Microsoft developed. I think basic programming language for it, and part of this movie is them like trying to license BASIC to Apple.
Altair is my favorite dragon type Pokemon.
Oh yeah, so they had the Altair in there. They showed obviously a lot of early Apple and IBM computers in this. They showed the Lisa. They showed the original Macintosh. Little snippet of Windows 1.0. There is a lot of stuff in this movie for just kind of like oogling of like, oh yeah, there's that computer there.
Yeah, I did like that.
And there is also the whole both Apple and Microsoft visiting Xerox's headquarters to see the Xerox Alta, which is the first computer with a graphical user interface and a mouse. And we see kind of how both Steve Jobs and Bill Gates look at this as something to clone.
I did really enjoy the IBM execs, or maybe the Xerox execs, I think, actually, passing around the mouse and, like, looking at it like, the fuck is this
Xerox.
Yeah, at Xerox, where the engineers are showing off the Alto to sort of the like C-suite executives. They're all like, what's this thing? But yeah, I mean, I liked all of the callbacks to the early computer hardware and software. Again, like the broad strokes of this movie are pretty accurate. It's just a lot of the individual scenes that are probably mostly made up. I think that's a good summary of where it is. So I guess kind of moving on from the story and some of the people, what did we think of the production quality of this for being a TV movie, essentially?
I think it was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
It didn't need much CG except for Bomber's crazy fourth wall break.
Yeah, the thing that was completely unnecessary.
That scene is amazing. I like that was cinema.
I will put in part of that scene in the audio right here in the episode, because it is just the Microsoft and IBM people having a meeting, and then like the movie pauses and the seat that Steve Ballmer is sitting in moves closer to the viewer. The rest of the scene moves into like a picture frame on a wall. So it looks like Steve Ballmer is sort of standing in an art gallery with like the movie on the wall as a painting, and he just turns like directly to you, and it's an incredible scene. And then he like sits back in his chair, and then the movie like transitions him back into the frame, and it keeps going.
We think we have what you need.
That's a start.
Now, we know that IBM has set up this place to compete head-on with Apple, and that you're gearing up to come out with a personal computer that will wipe them out. So we can get you an operating system.
What kind of operating system?
It's called DOS.
This is amazing. But not just amazing, it's historic. It should be taught in all the history books. I mean, hung and framed in the National Gallery or something. Because this is the instant of creation of one of the greatest fortunes in the history of the world. I mean, Bill Gates is the richest guy in the world because of what started in this room. You want to know what else? It wasn't exactly smoke and mirrors, but we didn't have anything. I mean, not a damn thing. Here we were, this 2-bit little outfit telling IBM we had the answer to their problems. The DOS, the disk operating system, to make all those zillion IBM computers compute. I mean, we didn't even remotely own anything like what Bill was selling them. Nada. Zip.
Of course, we don't just want to sell it to you outright. We want to be able to license it to you.
You want to retain ownership?
Right.
Well, the profits are in the computers themselves, not this software stuff.
It's a very like Bill Nye transition. Like it is a very, very 90s thing to do. But yeah, I thought the production was pretty good. You know, they didn't have to do a lot of CG, but there was still a lot of sets, and I don't know how much of that was built for this, but it seemed pretty impressive.
The actress they got to portray the actress from the 1984 commercial also looked quite spot on, and her costuming looked quite spot on. And I assume they didn't go out and get the actual actress from the commercial, but maybe they did.
In that scene where they're showing it
in the filming it scene.
I didn't remember what she looked like in that. I was
she walks over, and I think Ridley Scott gives her like some direction, and she like nods and leaves.
Okay. I was too distracted by the Klingon.
Yeah, I still haven't watched Star Trek aside from the 2009 one.
That's also a good movie. Not really Star Trek, but it's a good movie.
I kind of want to talk about the ending and like the framing of this movie in the time period. I had missed the detail about it. I remember now that it was based on the book, but I had forgotten that when I was thinking about it, when I was writing about it. But 1999 feels a very strange time for this movie to come out, or even 1997, because the very conference with Jobs and Gates that bookends the movie on either side is the exact same conference where Apple announces that Internet Explorer would be the default web browser on the Macintosh, and there is no mention of the internet anywhere in this movie. And maybe that's a limitation of the book. It just seems such a strange choice to bookend the movie with that scene when by the time we're at that point, the internet's not like it's here, it's happening, like it's going to be a big deal. It is a big deal. And for that scene to be in the movie, but the internet not to be, is very bewildering to me.
Yeah, I think that might be another thing that would have got cut for time, especially with most of this movie focusing on the 1980s. Like, there's not a lot, like mostly late 70s to like 85. I want to say is when most of this movie occurs, and then it jumps forward. I do agree that this movie is very interesting in that it ends in 1997, and then the movie itself was made in 1999, because this is really before I think the peak of either Steve Jobs or Bill Gates in the public consciousness. Like, this is Steve Jobs, who has just come back to Apple, and he'll be there for more than a decade after this point, until he dies from cancer. And Bill Gates remains at Microsoft for a very long time.
I don't know that eating fruit is weird, but Steve Jobs definitely made it weird.
Yes. But yeah, I think that is one of the more interesting parts of this movie as like a telling of history, is that it's being done like way before these stories are done.
Yeah.
I think this was also the first portrayal of at least Steve Jobs in a movie.
The fades to black were constant. It was so bewildering. And I was like, I stopped just short of grabbing a stopwatch to time between fades to black. But I was like, there is no way that these are the shortest breaks from commercials in history.
Oh man, if that was made today, it would be like every minute.
Yeah, if every one of those was a commercial break, good lord.
TNT was going to get their money's worth.
But I swore some of them were like 30-second scenes between fades to black.
They were just keeping their options open.
Yeah. I would like to imagine they air this initially with doing commercial breaks immediately before and after the Steve Ballmer pop out.
In the material basis for the movie, they have all this that they're just leaving on the table. And it may be fair enough. They don't want to tell like an internet story. They want to tell an Apple versus Microsoft story. But that makes it just so strange that they would bookend with that scene and pay not even lip service relating to anything involving the internet. I couldn't stop thinking about how weird that was.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think too much about the internet specifically in this movie. I did definitely get the feeling that the pacing was weird in a lot of parts.
Oh, the pacing was all over the place.
Pacing was really weird. Pacing was weird, especially with the stuff with Steve Jobs and his kid, but not necessarily just that.
And they just skipped everything where Jobs wasn't at Apple.
Yeah.
Like that whole period of time was just completely skipped.
Yeah, it was definitely a movie of what is Steve Jobs and Bill Gates doing and everyone in their immediate circle.
It seems like it should have stopped at the toast and not had the Jobs Gates collab, the most ambitious crossover, bookending it. Because it seems like the book runs out of material at about that point, and they're having to kind of like, scramble, backfill.
Yeah, I guess I can see the value in having the movie skip to the present day with everyone in their roles. Like you see Steve Jobs and Bill Gates as they appear when the movie comes out, and that's kind of neat. But
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it that way. If I look at it more as like, and now here we are, you know the story after this point. Like, I guess that makes a little more sense. But it definitely like ages out a little more than I think the rest of the movie.
I mean, I thought it was a little bit weird when Nick Fury recruited Steve Jobs for the Avengers Initiative, but it was an interesting choice.
God damn it, Corbin. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the computer.
That man is playing Paint. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
That man is playing Myst. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. Hold on. How many of I didn't play classic Mac games. How many of these can I do? That man is playing Marathon. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. I like that one because it has the same amount of syllables as
that
Gallagher.
man is playing Halo Combat Evolved.
It's coming to the Mac, guys.
It's coming to the Mac. I can finally play Halo. So there was a very funny thing that happened with Steve Jobs and Noah Wyle after this movie came out. I'll read the snippet from an interview he did with Fortune in October of 2011. He said, quote, "I had apprehensions of playing Jobs in Pirates of Silicon Valley. TNT was really excited about me taking the part, but I had worries I usually didn't have as an actor. I knew something about him and I had the script, but I couldn't really get a beat on the guy until they sent me the documentary, Triumph of the Nerds. Then it was, oh my god, I've never seen anything like this. I have to play this guy. I was so taken by his presence, his confidence, smugness, smartness, ego, and his story's trajectory. He seemed to be the most Shakespearean figure in American culture in the last 50 years I could think of. The rise of, the fall of, and the return of. The truest definition of a tragic hero, but you get the bonus round that F. Scott Fitzgerald said didn't exist. Jobs had one hell of a second act." End quote. He said that the cast of the movie was told to not contact anyone they were playing in case one of them would see it as libel and shut down production of the movie. So the movie aired, and then the day after the movie aired, Steve Jobs called Noah Wyle.
Wow. Never mind my people call your people, like, get me Noah Wyle.
So according to Noah, Steve Jobs said, quote, "I'm just calling to tell you I thought you did a good job. I hated the movie. I hated the script. I think if you had spent a little more time and a little bit more money and maybe a little bit more attention to detail, you could have had something here. But you were good." End quote.
Wow.
Like he's just like
Steve Jobs and Bill Gates can agree on one thing.
I know.
The portrayal of me was reasonably accurate.
Both of them are like, wow, these absolute psychopaths. That's just like me, for real, for real.
That's so me. Me IRL.
It is them IRL. It is them IRL. So after that, Steve Jobs invited Noah Wyle to Macworld, New York, because he thought it'd be really funny if Noah did the first few minutes of his keynote address as Steve Jobs. Now, I'm sorry, this is like the worst video quality I've ever seen in my entire life. I tried for a really long time to find something better, and also the first like 10 seconds of this video doesn't have motion. But that's not your computer breaking or buffering, that's just a video.
Yeah, there is no good video of any of these old Macworld keynotes.
Go on 3, 2, 1, play.
Hi. Thanks for coming. This is going to be a great Macworld. You know, everybody at Apple has been thinking different for the last couple of years. We're selling a lot of computers. But there's something else happening here. The resurgence of Apple. And you're going to see a lot of that today. We've got some great new products, some really great new products, some insanely great new products, some really, totally, wildly, insanely great new products. We have got products that are going to make... That's not me at all. That's not me at all. You're blowing it. Look, you're supposed to come over here, open a water, get the slide clicker, then you can put your hands together. This insanely great thing, we stopped using that 100 years ago. You know? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Noah Wyle. I invited him here today so he could see how I really act, and plus because he's a better me than me.
Thank you. I am just glad that you're not mad about the movie.
What? Me upset? Hey, it's just a movie. But, you know, if you do want to make things right, you could get me a little part on ER. That'd be really great.
Dr. Jobs,
okay.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Huh? Are you still a virgin? Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, Noah Wyle.
Going back to that interview, Noah said, quote, "The first few rows, I think, could obviously tell it wasn't him, but most of the others didn't know at all. And there was this growing ripple of laughter throughout the auditorium when people got what was happening. I honestly had no idea what to expect. I thought the whole thing might be an ambush, that he'd get me to his event, and that what he said we were going to do was in fact what we were going to do, and I would somehow be humiliated. But he stayed on script and was very kind to me. You realize this is why he's so successful. He realized very quickly he could either come out with a paragraph in a newspaper disavowing the movie, or co-opt it and get me to his event and use the movie to get his own publicity." End quote.
This is basically the exact same play with Zuckerberg and The Social Network 11 years later.
I still need to watch The Social Network. I've not got to that yet.
Get in the comments, listeners, about whether you want to see Tech Tales Movie Club, The Social Network. If you want to see
the movie, we're gonna go.
Get in, loser. We're going social networking.
So, does anyone have anything they'd like to plug before we get out of here, Ben?
I don't really have anything.
What about you, Katie? Don't you have a video game or something?
I've just relaunched my blog at 347online.me/blog. And yes, as Corbin alluded to, you can play my video game, Cold Light. Excellent.
And you can find Tech Tales on Blue Sky at techtalesshow.com and on Mastodon at techtales@mas.to. I'll try to get the links to some of the scenes we talked about in the show notes, and definitely that Macworld video. And also the link to where you could watch it legally if it ever becomes legal to watch again will be down there.
10 years from now, this episode will still just have a to-do comment in the link to where to purchase it, where to view it legally.
That's it from me. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your podcast feed soon. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Mine.